You have been working toward a goal that isn't yours. You didn't choose your definition of success. It was installed in you. Before you could think critically, before your prefrontal cortex was even fully developed, the world handed you a blueprint. A house in the right neighborhood, a title that commands a room, a number in your account that when reached would finally confirm what you've always suspected, that you are enough. You have been running hard, smart, efficiently, and almost no one has asked you the one question that should have come first. Who built the track? This is not a video about slowing down. It's not a case for mediocrity. It's not a critique of ambition itself. It's a forensic examination of whose ambition you are living. Because there is a difference, a profound, measurable, psychologically documented difference between ambition that originates from within and ambition that was socially prescribed. And the cost of confusing the two is not just a career mistake, it is a life. Let's start with what you are losing. Not money, not time. Those are visible, measurable, recoverable. What you are losing is something researchers call intrinsic motivation. Psychologists Lubomirsky, Sheldon, and Schade, in their landmark work on the hedonic adaptation prevention model, identified something that should disturb every high achiever in this room. Intrinsic motivation, doing something for the inherent satisfaction of it, is one of the few documented sources of sustainable well-being.
And the research is unambiguous. Extrinsic motivation, doing something for a reward, a status signal, or external validation, triggers hedonic adaptation almost immediately upon achievement. You know this feeling. You felt it. You hit the goal. There was a window, maybe a few days, maybe a week, where it felt right. And then the baseline returned, and the next goal appeared, larger, further, more expensive to reach. This is not a character flaw. This is not ingratitude. This is the hedonic treadmill, first identified by Brickman and Campbell in 1971 and confirmed across thousands of studies since. The mechanism is simple. Your brain is not designed to feel permanently satisfied. It is designed to keep you moving toward the next target. What makes this dangerous is not the treadmill itself. What makes this dangerous is that someone else set the speed.
Research published in Personality and Individuals in 2025, studying ambition as a psychological construct, found this. Higher levels of ambition are associated with an increased willingness to violate personal values in pursuit of goals, because the ambitious individual has begun to prioritize the end over the means. Read that again slowly. When the goal isn't yours, when the definition of success was handed to you by your parents, your culture, your peer group, you will begin to compromise things that are fundamentally yours in the service of a destination that fundamentally isn't. That is not ambition. That is servitude with a productivity aesthetic. Here is the psychology no one explains cleanly. In 2023, researchers at the University of Maryland, Sapienza University of Rome, and Vita Salute San Raffaele University published a study on what they called the quest for significance, the core psychological engine driving most ambition. The finding was precise. Ambitious people are characterized by strong motivation towards great and valuable objectives, with the superordinate goal being not the achievement itself, but the gain of respect and recognition from others. The superordinate goal, the goal above the goal, not the business, not the wealth, not the title, the recognition. This means that for most high achievers, the actual product they are spending their life building is not the outcome they claim. It is an audience's perception of the outcome.
Now layer on top of that this research finding from Stanford's Graduate School of Business, published in 2024 in PNAS Nexus. A study by Al-Zahawi, Reet, and Flynn at Stanford found that individuals with higher measured ambition were indeed more likely to reach leadership positions,
but were also significantly more likely to overestimate their own effectiveness in ways that were not corroborated by any third-party evaluation. In other words, the more ambitious you are, the more likely you are to believe the version of yourself that your ambition requires you to believe, regardless of whether that version is accurate. This is the cognitive architecture of the trap. You are running towards a destination defined by other people's validation. You are telling yourself a story about your effectiveness that your ambition needs to be true, and the psychological pressure required to maintain that narrative to keep performing at the level that the story demands is measured, documented, and accumulating. Research compiled from McKinsey, Deloitte, and Gallup in 2025 shows that 82% of American professionals are currently at risk of burnout. 82%. In the wealthiest, most ambitious era in modern history. There is a word for a system that extracts maximum output from a person who believes they are working for themselves when they are actually working for the approval of others. Economists call it extraction. Psychologists call it external locus of control, and the NIH's own career research division describes it clearly. The sunk cost fallacy in career terms looks like individuals committing to career paths despite new data that it is no longer the right fit, because they have already invested time, effort, and identity into it. Identity. That is the key word. When your ambition becomes your identity, when the pursuit of a socially defined success becomes the story you tell about who you are, then abandoning that pursuit doesn't just feel like quitting. It feels like self-destruction. And that feeling, that psychological terror of redefining yourself after years of investment, is the lock on the cage, not the bars. The lock. Now let's talk about the divergence. The separation between the average mindset and the elite one, and I use elite precisely, not aspirationally, is not a matter of harder work or better tactics. It is a difference in source. Where does the drive originate? The average ambitious person operates from what researchers call an external locus of control. Their ambition is responsive. It reacts to social comparison. It inflates when peers advance and deflates when they fall behind. It is fundamentally a performance, staged for an invisible audience that is also performing for them. Their goals are set at the intersection of what impresses people I respect and what I can tell myself is also what I want. The goalposts move because the audience moves. The audience moves because social comparison is a moving target. This person will never arrive, not because they lack capability, but because the destination was never a place. It was a feeling of being seen, and that feeling cannot be banked.
The elite mindset, documented in Ray Dalio's longitudinal personality research studying leaders, including Gates, Bezos, and Musk, operates from what researchers identified as a singular unusual trait: the ability to see both the largest possible frame and the most granular details simultaneously, and to synthesize goals from that combined perspective rather than from social calibration. In plain language, they decide what matters before consulting what other people think about what matters. The sequence is inverted. The average person asks, what would success look like to people who matter? Then they pursue it and call it their dream. The rare person asks, what do I believe has genuine value in the world? Then they pursue it and call it their work. Warren Buffett, still at 94, the most studied capital allocator in history, has said with documented consistency that the metric he uses for his own decisions is what he calls the inner scorecard. Am I doing what I would do if no one could see the outcome? Not what will impress, not what will signal status, not what will generate respect from people he respects. What he would do in the dark, with no audience, with no record. That question, that single question, is the difference between a life built on intrinsic architecture and one built on a social scaffold that you can never stop maintaining. Stoic philosophy, specifically Marcus Aurelius in Meditations, identified this same distinction nearly 2,000 years ago. He called it the separation between what is truly yours and what merely passes through you. Wealth passes through, status passes through, the audience's approval passes through. What is truly yours is the capacity for judgment, the quality of your attention, the integrity between what you value and what you pursue. These cannot be taken. They cannot be socially calibrated away. They do not adapt hedonically. They compound, quietly, without applause.
I want to leave you with something precise. Not a call to action, not a checklist, not a framework with a name. A question. One question. 3 words. For whose approval? Apply it to the goal you are currently working toward. Apply it to the number you have in your head that represents enough. Apply it to the title you are building toward, the company you are trying to build, the lifestyle you are trying to construct. For whose approval? If the answer comes quickly, if a face, a community, a category of people appears before the answer does, you have your data. This is not an argument for inaction. This is not an argument for detachment or minimalism or any other aesthetic that has been repackaged as a philosophy of the enlightened. This is a precision tool. The question is designed to do one thing: to create a gap, a single moment of space between the stimulus of social expectation and your response to it. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, founder of logotherapy, wrote that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies human freedom. Most people never find that space, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack ambition, but because they were handed a response before they were old enough to question the stimulus. Their ambition was preloaded, their definition of success was pre-installed, and by the time they were capable of asking whether the destination was genuinely theirs, they had traveled so far toward it that the sunk cost fallacy made the question feel like a threat.
Research from the University of Warwick confirms that the factors making someone most susceptible to sunk cost thinking are effort, belief, and emotional investment. Not money, not time, emotional investment. When you have organized your identity around a particular definition of success, when who you are is inseparable from where you are going, asking whether the destination is right feels like asking whether you are right. And most people cannot tolerate that question, so they run faster instead. Here is the uncomfortable synthesis. The trap is not ambition. Ambition, directed by genuine internal values, calibrated against your own standards, measured on your own scorecard, is one of the most powerful forces available to a human being. The trap is borrowed ambition. The trap is the ladder you climbed without ever asking where it was leaning. There is a version of your future in which you reach every goal you have set. You hit the number, you get the title, you build the thing, and on the day it happens, you feel the familiar gap. The audience applauds, and in the silence that follows, in the quiet that settles when the performance is done, you will have one clear moment to ask the question you should have asked at the beginning. Was this mine?
The only way to answer yes is to decide now what mine actually means, not what it meant to the people who raised you, not what it means to the peers who are watching, not what it means to a market that has monetized aspiration into a $1 trillion behavioral modification system. What it means to you, in the quiet, with no audience, on your own scorecard. That is not the beginning of giving up. That is the beginning of actually winning.